Good morning, UPB from OptionMillionaires.com. It's October 17th, a Thursday. How's everyone doing this morning? Late last night, Washington finally passed through the raising of the debt ceiling. That's great. That's like giving someone who has a spending problem, spends too much money, and giving them even more credit, okay, to spend, even though they can't afford it. But hey, whatever. We're traders here. And when you look at a market like this, and you look at the S&P 500 ETF, the spiders, SPY, and you can see this trend line, the trend is up. It's funny, you go to some of the bearish blogs where they continually talk about how we're all just doomed. But guess what? Would you want to be doomed, heading down the toilet bowl and broke, or would you rather have a lot of money to play for that downside that's going to come inevitably when the debt bubble pops and people finally come to realize that the government's just continually taking on debt and interest rates are going to rise? But until that time happens, look at this trend. And I've been pointing this out for a long time. If you want to look it up, go to optionmillionaires.com, go to Stock Twits, buy the dips. If you're not in the audio, in the chat room at optionmillionaires.com, I'm saying every single dip since the 2009 March 6th, the lows in March have been a great buying opportunity. And most recently, since the Abenomics low, back in November, they've been V-bottoms. These V-bottoms, you can even go back in earlier in the year in 2012. Look at these beautiful V-bottoms, and I've said it was going to happen again this time, and it did. Look at this V-bottom. Beautiful V-bottom. Continuing up. Futures are lower, though. Futures lower, so we're looking for a little bit of, imagine that, stocks going lower, which is great. Keep some modicum of respect in this market where, hey, stocks will fall a little bit. But then when the bears start salivating like they were here, and I remember going to Stock Twits and some of the other, going to Twitter and some of the other outlets where people vent their opinions. Right here, everyone was talking about this big bubble is going to crash. I mean, Tesla was falling, right? Tesla, which is, I mean, look at the chart for Tesla. I mean, still, look at the decline it had. Everybody was drooling. They're like, oh my, this bubble's going to pop. Okay, we're back at 183. So it's just, if you weren't buying the dip, no, you weren't listening to us at OptionMillionaires.com. I've been talking about it for years. I talked about it. I did a video on it, and I also talked about it via the blog. If you can't watch a video and you just have to read, well, I talked about it, and I said, this government shutdown will just be another great buying opportunity. And sure enough, here we are, barely a percentage point away from new all-time highs in the market. It was a great buying opportunity. But let's look into it. We have earnings kicking up in force. But I want to look real quick at Solar City, because this is a stock that we were talking about in the chat room at OptionMillionaires.com. Last week, I got into the $41 calls that expire tomorrow. Those calls I got at 30 cents. The stock right now is at $54. Those calls, if the market would open right now, are at $13. That's $310 into 13 grand. Woohoo! And that's why we trade stock options. We don't trade stock options for any other reason, tend to make money. So if people say the market's going to crash, and ultimately it is going to crash, we'll trade the puts at that point in time. But for now, we're trading still against what everyone thinks is going to happen, which is continued gains in the stock market. Namely, we'll go with Solar City. Look at it move it up. It gapped up last week. This made a significant move to the upside. And then in the chat room, we were talking about this one, and you look it up at OptionMillionaires.com. A lot of people got into the call contracts. Was on the watch list. And Jimmy Bob also got some in his Ditto Trade account at 25 cents. And just a spectacular day, 400% gain just on the weeklies alone, and that was before today's pre-market rise is over $54. J.P. Morgan Chase initiating $68 price target on Solar City. Let's move on. We have earnings after the bell today. Earnings after the bell. The most exciting one will be Google. Google is a stock that I've called. See, look at this blue line. This blue line has worked perfectly, absolutely perfectly. I talked back at early September. We bounced off it. I talked about it again just recently. I actually alerted the calls. I said, Google, last time it hit this level, rose $40, $50. It actually ended up rising $60. And I was looking for a $40, $50 rise. Look at it again, right up to resistance here, almost $900. Will earnings after the bell today push it to new all-time highs? Back in April of 2007, Google rallied 20% on earnings. Some of the call contracts went up significantly. One contract in particular went from 50 cents to $55. That's $500 into $55,000. So Anyway, you can see the rise Google has had. It's just beautiful from a technical perspective. Coming up against this trend line resistance, we're going to pull back here and maybe bust through it on earnings, or we're going to pull back like eBay did. eBay, which has been stuck in a long-term channel, see this channel, is going to come down to this level, likely bounce back up. It's stuck in this channel. It was a bad call on my part. I'm in the calls. I was expecting to move up. Ultimately to $60, not going to happen today. But the same thing with Google. Technically, from this perspective, look at this long term. People are calling for a head and shoulders pattern. It hit support at 845, vaulted higher. We're going to see a continuation of this. It's going to be interesting. Let's move on. We have CMG. I just want to point out with Google, I've been trading options for Google on earnings in anticipation of that day when it does again move up 20%. This could be it. And I'll just give you a little word of advice. I'm not in the Google calls or puts, so that's a good thing. Because if I would, it would stay flat. Yeah, that's how it works sometimes. But let's move on. We have CMG, earnings after the bell. Analysts have become increasingly bullish on the stock, hit new all-time highs. It's pulling back a little bit from its highs, but ultimately, you can look at $500 looks well in reason. We're back to that autopilot mode for Chipotle Mexican Grill. No reason to expect it to crash here. Actually, quite the contrary. We could see a ramp up to new all-time highs. On CMG, we have Las Vegas Sands, which is up to multi-year highs, broken out of this long-term channel. And look at it, it's just beautiful on a weekly chart. Been up the last 6 weeks alone, breaking out. This could be a $100 stock by the end of the year. ISRG has been up off its lows, coming up. And we look at this long-term resistance line as a possible point of appreciation of where the stock's going to hit when earnings come out after the bell today. This is going to be an interesting one. We have earnings heating up. Love it. Google's going to be exciting. And, of course, next week we have Apple. Apple, which has been stuck here, looks bullish to me going forward. Still love this stock into the 600s. Before year's end, possible new all-time highs. Yeah, call me crazy. But it's going to be an interesting report. That's Tuesday after the bell, I believe. It's been a great week. Options are rocking it. We have one option. I just want to talk about this. HST. This is called Host Hotels and Resorts. Some unusual option volume. People starting this week have been buying up the $17 puts that expire tomorrow. Just amazing to see it. And you look at the volume. I can't understand it. So anyway, if you see an unusual activity in Host Hotel Resorts, price-wise, it drops to needs to drop about to $16.80, a 5% drop. You'll know people were privy to the information before it was released to the general public. So, all right, it's UPB here from OptionMillionaires.com. So it's been a great week. Solar City is rocking the house. And we have Google earnings after the bell. eBay is tanking, though, pre-market, as is. We have also Stanley Black & Decker is taking it on the chin pre-market. And we have Select Comfort, which is not providing any comfort to its shareholders, down 20-something%. So it's going to be an interesting day. We have the debt limit raised. We have the debt ceiling raised. And we can just go on spending our merry way and not worrying about what's going to happen 5, 10, 15 years down the road. All right, UPB here from OptionMillionaires.com. Everyone have a great day. BTW, I have a beginner option webinar. Check it out, 11 a.m. this morning. Come on by. Goodbye.